All right, look, I've been through this a few times now this season. The Texans beat a team that's not nearly close to them in the standings, a team that hasn't won that many games that you think, they should just crush them. And immediately afterwards, because it's a close game, you feel negative about it. And look, we've all been through it. I do think that there are some things the Texans can build on from this game. And by the time the Texans go through their bye week, I will have full-blown convinced me that all problems have been fixed. I understand this is a weakness that I have. I'm not ashamed of it. Damn it. Thanks to BetUS for sponsoring this video. CJ Stroud spoke after the game yesterday. I picked the 5 or 6 questions that I liked the best. This first one was on what it meant for them to put together 2 scoring drives in the second half, which they have struggled to do, as many of you know. Here's CJ.
Yeah, those 2 scoring drives are big. You know, we put some really good drives together in the first half, just couldn't finish it. And you know, it's something that we got to look back and get better at, just scoring when we got these good drives. You know, we get a turnover by the defense. We got to be able to, you know, try to generate 7, not 3. So, but yeah, out there ultimately, you know, we handled everything well. They switched up a lot of things that they were doing on film, and you know, did a lot of different coverages and different looks, and you know, ran a little bit of man coverage and stuff. So. But I thought we handled it really well.
Okay, so the thing that I got excited about there was the Jaguars showed some things that they might not necessarily have expected. And instead of coming out and having some success in the first half and then falling completely apart, the Texans were running the ball abysmally. I'll disagree with something that CJ's about to say here alongside with what D'Amico said when they talk about the offensive line. But in the second half, the run game got going. In the first half, just to show you just one example of what was going on in the first half in the run game, where Joe Mixon was averaging like 2 yards per carry much of the time, really right up until about midway through the third quarter was when everything got going in the run game. But look at 41 there to your right, the Jaguars just manhandling a tight end on the line of scrimmage. You've got a center and a guard that kind of lose track of a defensive tackle. They both leave at the same time. A lot of that stuff when they're trying to run their base run game. And one thing I also noticed too was there was a lot of blitz versus the run in the first half. The Texans took care of that through a combination of, I think, different play calling in the run game, but then also just by picking up the blitz progressively as the game went on. They backed them off a little bit. I'll show a play that was very key and critical to that. Over at BetUS, by the way, where I've had a lot of luck with the under with the Texans, and then I delude myself into being optimistic, and I take the over, and I've been burned every time I take the over. I'm not going to talk myself into taking the over on the Dolphins game here coming up in a couple of weeks, but when you use the code YouTube150, you'll get a 150% sign-up bonus, 125% sign-up bonuses on your second and third deposits, all the way up to $2,000. Just use that code YouTube150. Next question for CJ was on the offensive line and how they performed today.
Yeah, I mean, they're our everything, you know. It starts up front, both O-line and D-line, and, you know, when they can come out and have great protection, you know, from the start, it gives me a sense of confidence. It gives the receivers knowing that they can run their full depth. The backs know where to hit, you know, and once you get that flowing, it looks like it's working. But, you know, I think they've done a good job by handling all the noise and the media and all these things, because at the end of the day, one time, they'll love you one week and hate you the next. That's part of the business we're in. So I think they've done a great job of just keeping their head down and working.
All right, let me start with the last part there. The business we're in, they're going to love you one week, hate you the next. The offensive line is on a bit longer of a probation period than 1 week. So this next stretch of 3 games versus 3 good teams, that's going to be the real test for whether they can gain my love. My advice to young athletes of any variety, whether you be high school, college, NFL, never, ever, ever, ever accept the praise from the media, because as soon as you accept the praise, then you care about the criticism. And a lot of times the criticism is either inaccurate, inappropriate, ill-placed, whatever it might be. Sometimes it's dead on accurate, and that hurts too. But this is the that's why Nick Saban calls it rat poison. As soon as you start allowing voices from the outside to penetrate your brain, as soon as you start caring about how you're received on social media or anything, you've lost the battle. You're going to be sensitive to the criticism when it comes around. So everybody has to find their own balance. As far as the offensive line goes, this is one thing I want to praise them for, because the blitz was a problem versus the run in the first half. I don't think it was as much of a problem in the pass protection in the first half, but cumulatively over the course of the game, when the Jaguars weren't able to blitz effectively, then they backed off on using the blitz in the run game. The play calling too. So two things about that, about what they did to adjust to the Jaguars. For one, just if you look at the Dalton Schultz touchdown, look at the defensive line here. They run a zone blitz, so they rush 5. They're dropping a defensive end out. The Texans have 5-man protection plus the running back. The running back stays in because he sees blitz. And they handle the blitz. And then lo and behold, what happens on a blitz if you pick it up with your offensive line and your running back without having to commit extra tight ends? Because look at what Dalton Schultz does. This is on 3rd and 10. I mean, obviously they weren't going to be running the ball here. But Dalton Schultz releases immediately, because why bother keeping him into block when he can't block? Get him out on a route. They got fewer guys in coverage because of the blitz, and he's wide open, and he gets the touchdown. So I thought that was good. Another play, let's see. Let's check out what they start doing. Early in the game, when they just tried to run their base runs, outside zone, what have you, they couldn't win the physical matchup. So something that's worked for them in the past, they started attacking the perimeter, and they did it with pulling guards. They did it here with a fullback, and it works. Shaq Mason, good job bringing it, knowing where you're supposed to go. Good job by Cade Stover there. And then Joe Mixon just has to beat one guy. You look at, I think this was a big run in the 3rd quarter. This was a beautiful job, as we've seen more examples in the last few weeks of, hey, they're running zone to the right. Everybody's got a hat on a hat. The boot action worked. Look at CJ as he carries out the fake. Look at number 41. There's your seam right there. And then do we get a block down here? Well, no, he didn't have to. So Mechie was in position to block. But like that's the stuff we saw as the game went on that started to click. The one thing about the zone run game is that when you have a good zone run game, even when you're really good, as you'll recall back with the Arian Foster days, there are a lot of times where in the first half, man, things aren't working. Gary, why are you still running the ball? It's not working. And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, you start getting those backers and safeties flowing too fast. The boot play action starts to work, and it clicks. You just don't trust that with the Texans because they haven't demonstrated an ability to do it before. So kudos to Joe Mixon, the tight ends, everybody obviously, and all of that. Next question on playing 3 games in 10 days. It's really 3 games in 11 days. I don't know where that, I guess 10's just easy to remember. It's 3 games in 11 days coming up here, and how necessary the timing of this bye week is.
It is very necessary. I thought, the way we've handled these last couple of weeks has been long, to go. This has been a grind, kind of getting to week 14 to get a bye. We're not fiending for a bye, but we're also very grateful that it comes now, and then we got 3 games in 10 days or something crazy like that. So this is like perfect timing. It's been tough. It's been a long year from, we the first team to practice, got 4 preseason games, and then we go on and get the latest bye, and then go from there and get 3 games in 10 days. But ultimately, man, the league is trying to challenge us to see what type of team we are. I think that this is perfect for us. We can recoup, our spirit, body, mind, and come back, and go on a stretch, man. And this is where our best ball needs to be played in, late December, early January, and then go on to the playoffs.
Okay. Recoup, regenerate, whatever other words he said. Yeah, they desperately need this, and you don't want to make excuses for anybody or anything. There's other teams that have late bye weeks, but man, I forget to add that extra week of training camp into the equation. And the Texans load managed like mofos and everything, so it's not like guys were just physically worn out by the end of training camp. But it's a long time psychologically, I think, to go without that break. And it's the one good thing about when this break was timed was it's up against this triumvirate of teams they're going to face that we've known about since the schedule release. Miami, My biggest concern against Miami, the ball comes out fast. Tackling is at a premium. Tua Tagovailoa gets rid of the ball faster than anybody else in the league. That's great if you can anticipate, if you can keep anything up in front of you, but then you got to be able to tackle. And the Texans haven't been tackling as well as they did in the first few weeks of the season. I think they've made some improvements in some areas. We'll see if maybe Christian Harris is back. We'll see if I'm just Jalen Petrie. A fella can dream, okay? So maybe those guys will be back, but tackling is paramount there. Kansas City, the defense is a huge challenge. Look, Kansas City, it's going to be a one-score game, all right? All right? We knew yesterday, at some point yesterday in the second half, you realized, it's going to be a one-score game. It's always a one-score game with the Texans. It's always a one-score game with the Chiefs. The damn Raiders had a shot versus the Chiefs. So, but that'll be the big test. And then Baltimore, look, all the old things that you worry about with this defense going back to last year. As far as Kansas City also, Chris Jones looms in the middle. Thought the interior offensive line did some really good things yesterday. Not one of those defensive tackles was at the caliber of Chris Jones. Baltimore, likewise, look, we saw the struggles the interior offensive line had last year versus them. The defense isn't the same as it used to be, but the Baltimore offense, you got a mobile quarterback, you got Derrick Henry. The Texans' run defense is way better than it feels at times, but they're effective by and large on the sum total of things. Except Derrick Henry, we know. Do I have to fill you in on Derrick Henry? Although remember last year, two of Derrick Henry's worst games of his career came via the Houston Texans. That was behind a much worse offensive line than he has this year. And then Lamar Jackson. Last year, the Texans in the playoffs came out in the first half and said, hey, we're going to blitz the hell out of Lamar Jackson. We're going to break type. And it worked for a while. The Ravens figured it out. I think this year they're much more capable of trying that same strategy just because Kamari Lassiter and Derek Stingley are both out there. So D'Amico's been way more aggressive in spells and doses with his blitzing than I ever thought he would be. So that'll be a big test there. But it's a huge test, obviously. CJ, on whether he feels if he and wide receiver Nico Collins are back in sync.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think, Nico's come back. I don't think he was very rusty, which has been amazing to see. He's been turning it on every game, so it's very inspiring to see, and I can't wait to just keep building with him.
Yeah, I was actually kind of surprised by that question. Maybe it was phrased differently than it said in the transcripts, but the chemistry was there from the get-go. Like from the very first damn play that Nico got back. The problem is he's had 2 huge touchdowns called back because of penalties. Penalties which were valid penalties to call, and yet they didn't really affect the actual play. So it wasn't like Nico just had a couple of fluke big touchdowns that were called back. He had 2 huge touchdowns called back because of penalty. That's the only reason he wasn't over 100 yards the last 2 weeks. So he goes over 100. It was kind of more gratifying in a way, the manner in which he came by this 100-plus yards, because it felt like a steady procession of classic CJ Stroud to Nico Collins plays. You had that beautiful out where Nico had to toe tap. You had Nico over the middle where the defensive back fell down. You saw shorter stuff. You saw deeper stuff. He did have a play called back because of penalty. So that even felt, hey, this is just a trend now, but we're going to fight through it today. The one thing about Tank Dell, because I want to revisit this a little bit if I can find it. Tank Dell on that throw that should have been an interception, should have been a defensive pass interference. And I know my initial thought was like, oh man, why can't CJ seem to hit Tank deep the way he used to? For what it's worth, for one, this was a situation in the pocket. So I mean, that dude that's closing in on him had leapt and jumped instead of going right after him because he thought he was going to get a screen or something, I guess. But CJ had to sidestep to the left, kind of throw off balance. Like he hops backwards, throws off balance, might have had his hand tipped. And yeah, it didn't get there, but that's the longest throw CJ's made in the NFL. That was a 70-yard throw. Should have drawn a DPI. I'm not overly worried about that one. I think the connection to Tank has gotten better over the last few weeks. Last week, late in the game, I think Tank typically would have caught that. I don't know what's going on with his hands this year. He had that drop in the Patriots game, but this part of it, the passing game, I feel better about it as the season goes along, and especially just with the reintroduction of Nico Collins. It makes everything easier. Makes it easier to get the blitz off of you, which helps in the run game. That complementary part of Joe Mixon and Nico Collins, I think, can start to take hold. You just got to do it against the better defenses. A couple more questions. This question was indiscernible, but CJ goes on to talk about the tight ends and the receivers in the blocking game.
Yeah. Right there, I just seen the O-line, just, and our tight ends, Irv stepped up and did a great job. Cade, Dalton, and our receivers too. Rob is doing great. Nico, Tank, Metch all bought into the run game. I thought Jane Wayne did a really good job today. His first NFL game. So,
yeah, the Cade Stover, I think when they stopped trying to just go front side in a static formation, like we saw Schultz early on just totally didn't get it done. I mean, Schultz whiffed in a run play. When they started bringing Cade Stover back across the formation, when they started pulling the guards, which has been kind of hit or miss for the Texans, but when it works, it works. And really, when they just started trying to sprint to the sideline as fast as possible, they were able to get angles on guys. The guys on the interior offensive line did a good job sealing the backside. So I'll credit Bobby Slowick for kind of changing the composition of the run game as the game went along. I still wasn't super satisfied with the level of physicality of the offensive line. I thought everybody did a good job of getting in the way of people, but I'm not seeing people just destroy dudes and get downfield. But baby steps, they did a better job in the second half of passing off defenders and working up to backers, doing all that good stuff. And really, it was Cade Stover, Robert Woods on that last play, all those guys on the perimeter that really worked yesterday. Would it have worked versus the Titans? I don't think so. The Jacksonville just doesn't have the horses that the Titans do on their defense. But in terms of execution, in terms of doing what you got to do and figuring it out as the game goes along against an inferior defense compared to what you saw last week, I'll give credit where credit is due. I thought they made improvement. This is... this final one is just him on Azeez Al-Shire, which I see is a popular topic in the chat. We'll get to that. I had to take a break, okay? I had to take a break from it for a bit.
I just want to say, man, I just want, prayers to Trevor, and I really hope and pray he's okay, and, prayers to his family as well. But, yeah, I'm still rocking with Azeez. I don't think that was his intent. I pray that Trevor is okay, and, his family is right there with him. So, yeah. God bless you guys.
Okay, so hot button issue. I should probably do a video on it, the Azeez Al-Shire on Trevor Lawrence hit. But I feel like I've got a lot of measured and nuanced takes about it. And every time I try to give a measured or nuanced take about it on Twitter, the irrational responses from angry people are about to radicalize me. They're about to turn me into a bloodthirsty caveman that just thinks that quarterbacks should have no protections ever under any circumstances. I've grudgingly accepted everything they do in the way that they protect the quarterback. This is the one thing about Azeez's hit. It's that I think it's notable that it's rare that there is a hit like that on a quarterback. I mean, Kiko Alonso back in 2017 is probably the closest comp. So it's not like this is something that's just going to happen because it's impossible to avoid the hit. I do think that the malicious intent that some people are attributing to Azeez as being a headhunter or something. And I mean, I've seen writers write articles about, like, without even saying whether it's a debate or not, saying he targeted and hit him in the head, which is untrue. I think it's pretty clear when I watch it, I'm biased obviously, that Azeez was trying to hit him in the chest. If anything, maybe he was targeting the injured left shoulder, and I'm all for that. That's football. Target an injury, that's not the head. Could he have laid off? I think he probably could have. And the thing that's going to hurt Azeez is that he's got a history. He had a really egregious late hit last week. He had the play on the sideline in the Bears game where he ended up punching the guy, which I still like. So look, you play, you pay, and that's the way he plays. I think he's probably going to get a hefty fine. Kiko Alonso was not fine. He was not suspended for the hit he had in 2017. But I don't know what Kiko's priors were, like Aziz Alshire. I think because he's had other unsportsmanlikes this year, he might get a suspension. Same way we've seen with Neville Hewitt or Kareem Jackson last year when he was in Denver, because it was the multiple offense part of it more so than the individual hit. The one thing I really don't like about the way they call that play is that, look, and this is where I'm saying all this without malice. Like I love the way Aziz Alshire plays. When you watch that play, Trevor Lawrence, you cannot tell me for a single damn second that Trevor Lawrence was thinking more about his safety than getting to the first down marker. Because the way the rule is called, they phrase it wrong, because they say that they'll mark the ball down where the slide is initiated. That's not true, because the slide was initiated about 4 yards before the first down line, which would have been the 44-yard line. But that's when he starts lowering his pads. He doesn't hit his shin until he's at the 45-yard line, 1 yard ahead of the line to gain. And that's where they mark it. They mark it where the first body part is down. So Trevor's shin was down right on that 45-yard line. If you call it the way you verbalize it, which is mark him down where he starts the slide, I think Trevor Lawrence has a lot less temptation to try to stretch that slide out. Because frankly, if you're the quarterback and a guy's in a position to make a hit like that, then you waited too long. Then you should have put your shoulder down and taken the punishment that you kind of invited upon yourself. Could it have been avoided by Alshire? Probably, but I'm not. And so I get the flag, I get the fine. I don't think that the intent was any more malicious than anybody is when they're trying to tackle and hit somebody. And look, when people try to tiptoe around and say, well, you try to hit people but not hurt them. No. I've never once in my life tried to hit somebody as hard as I possibly could without thinking that they might get injured. It's a matter of whether it's a clean or a dirty hit. So the clean or dirty part is where it comes in. Alshire was committed to hitting him, didn't target the head, looked like he was kind of zeroed in on Trevor Lawrence's chest, and that's what we got. So I think I'm cool with whatever penalty they give him. I just don't need to be out here acting like he's the worst human being who ever lived just because he made a football play. That's the way I feel about it right now. Ooh, Abigail made a good point. Let's see. Somebody said good point. Aziz was surrounded by the Bears players, pushed, taunted, hit. He swung at the guy nearest him. Yeah, he's got a way of getting surrounded by people, though. It's kind of like if somebody gets in an accident going 10 miles per hour over the speed limit, your first thought is like, okay, look, yeah, he shouldn't have been speeding, but that's not like reckless endangerment speeding or anything. But when somebody who's gotten, 29 speeding tickets or already has a reckless endangerment on his record gets in an accident, you're going to be a little less forgiving. And I think that's where you are with Aziz. Aziz toes that line. The part afterwards was an interesting spectacle, and I'm still not quite sure what to make of it because, man, I wish I could have been watching in real time to see exactly how everything was playing out, what set him off the second time. When we came back from break and they showed the clip of him flipping out on Brandon Scherf, but I don't know exactly how all that happened. I think some of the tumults from this will settle down, but McClain said it was the worst hit he's seen in 40 years. Bill Simmons says there hasn't been a hit like that since 1970. When did all these people forget about Vontaze Burfict? When did all these people forget about Ryan Clark or whomever else? And I know the hit was on a quarterback. I don't think Ryan Clark had any notable hits on quarterbacks. James Harrison. How are people so... how do they come down with... I feel like it's willful amnesia that the last thing they saw has to be the worst thing they ever saw. It's not. I think Kiko Alonso's hit in 2017 was worse than Alshire's hit. It's just that it happened to be that Trevor Lawrence, a guy that takes a lot of contact and is injured all the time, he tried to push the envelope. And Alshire probably should have been able to pull off, but Trevor Lawrence was also, he was pushing the envelope. And what were you doing in that neighborhood, man, at 2 a.m.? All right, what'd you think was going to happen? It was it's turning me into that, man. It's turning me into like, I went from yesterday being like almost nauseous and be like, oh gosh, I hope Trevor Lawrence is okay, to this point, I'm getting close, man. I'm getting close. I don't need anybody. I'm getting close. Damn it. I'm going to say something I regret. Then they complain that Aziz hit him with his arm. I know. Just Becker. Like, that's like all these clowns, excuse me, for people who I might have just quote tweeted up there. Like, what are you saying? It's the worst hit you've ever seen. There was no helmet to helmet contact. Like, that is not even close to remotely the worst thing you've seen on a football field. You're lying. Like, you're not telling the truth. If you are saying that's the worst thing you've ever seen on a football field, and you're ignoring the many examples of launching, helmet-to-helmet contact, dirty hits to knees, what are you even doing? You're engagement farming. You're just looking for clicks, and you're disingenuous. Let me tell you another damn let me bring this bullshit up. Excuse my language. Oh my gosh. What the hell is this? These damn nugget hussies. All right, Adam Schefter. Okay, let's see. Adam Schefter. Just wait until you see this butte here. Whatever the hell this means from Adam Schefter. It is now anticipated. Why is my shit not showing? It doesn't show my... All right, so Adam Schefter reports this. I can't get these things to pull up anymore. It's now anticipated that Texans linebacker Aziz Alshire will be suspended for the hit he delivered Sunday to Jaguars quarterback Trevor Lawrence. The only question is, for how long? All right, Adam. It is now anticipated that Texans linebacker Aziz Alshire will be suspended. Anticipated by whom? Like what? What kind of random general statement is that? What kind of that's not even a nugget. It's like you're selling me a bag of oregano and calling it weed. What the hell? That's something that used to happen back before there was so many other alternatives. So what? Stop it. Just stop it with this nonsense. That's the silliness that hit is invited. Adam Schefter reporting, it is anticipated that Alshire will be, he doesn't say by the league, not from league sources. He doesn't even throw in a sources there. You see what you're doing to me? Hey, like, subscribe. Thanks to BetUS for sponsoring the video. And thanks for letting me freak out a little bit about all this Alshire stuff. Unbelievable.